Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. Your host, Keith Weisheit, licensed clinical social worker. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it very much. We're always so very glad to have with us those people who are fighting for us and making a difference for us. We welcome back to the program U.S. Senator Dr. Bill Cassidy. Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Keith, thank you for having me, and hello to everybody in the Bayou region.
Well, listen, we appreciate it. We know that you're always fighting for us and trying to make a difference for what we need to do. Tell us a little bit about this recent passing of the disaster relief.
Yeah, so it's the first set of dollars that are going to come to our state to help recover from Hurricane Ida. This money will principally be used for housing. When you go over the affected areas, clearly housing is a huge issue. A man may live in a tent, but a mom and her kids, she's going to make sure they have a roof over their head. We want to make sure that people have roofs over their heads.
Yeah, and listen, we've got people that are not really wanting to leave their area. They're not really wanting to leave near where they are. And so we've got some people that are living in tents. And so we appreciate very much the fact that our state has addressed the issue that housing is the first start.
Yes, absolutely. And we need a solution for permanent housing. If you flew over the areas, even on Grand Isle, areas that were built after Katrina to hurricane code, by and large, did pretty well. The older home, the home I grew up in that now somebody else is living in, that sort of home did very poorly. So we also have to think about a longer term solution for affordable housing for working families. They can live near the coast, but don't have to fear their home being destroyed when the next storm comes.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how this bill is going to help.
Yeah, so it's going to give a lot of money to about $1 billion to the state, which they can use for many things. But again, I think the principal use will be housing. Initially, it'll be used for temporary housing, think manufactured homes or travel trailers that could be put someplace somebody could live in until their home is restored. Now, this is in addition to the dollars FEMA already has that allows them to help multifamily, think apartment complexes and people's homes to be restored to where they're at least livable. Won't be fancy, but it's a roof over your head. So all this to meet that kind of, we need it fixed now for someone to have a place to live.
Yeah, and I don't know that people always realize how often you have to fight for these things, but this had to go through 3 different appeals to get this passed.
Yeah, so Southwest Louisiana has been waiting over a year for relief from hurricanes Laura and Delta, and just now getting relief that has been held that long. You fly over Calcasieu, you still see blue tarps on people's roofs. We don't want that to be the case in the Bayou region. So we're able to get dollars in, and there will be another tranche of dollars, another pot of dollars, probably in December. The point being, let's meet the needs of the people affected by Hurricane Ida so they can restore their lives, restore our communities.
So we're talking about some initial monies and then some monies that are going to come in thereafter. So we're talking about some initial relief and some longer standing relief.
Absolutely. That's all part of the disaster relief. I'm also working trying to get past the bipartisan infrastructure package. And that would do things such as dollars for coastal restoration, universal access to high-speed internet, $3.5 billion for flood mitigations, billions to harden the grid. Those are additional dollars that continue to kind of upgrade our state in order so that when there's a big storm, we don't have to have the same events that we did this past storm.
Yeah, and so it helps really strengthen our infrastructure so that we can prevent having this natural disaster be so widespread with so many impacts to so many people.
We want it to be like Jefferson Parish. When I was there after Ida, and I spoke to an elected official, and she said, the most important thing, the ground is dry. By that, she meant that however many years ago, when George W. Bush said, we're going to protect this from happening again, they built the hurricane mitigation system, hurricane protection system, and it held. There was no flooding. That's what we need across our state. That levee system, and now let's add to that hardened grid. So when there's a big storm, our state withstands the storm. That's the only way we're going to be able to survive. We got to have it.
Well, and so the monies that were used before and that Marganza to the Gulf, where we know that we are preventing a lot of that flooding. And again, it's a great point that you make. A lot of the parishes that were really significantly impacted only had some of that water that was driven, like Grand Isle had water that was from the Gulf itself. But in our areas, none of those issues overtoppled our levees. And so
Yes,
we did such a great job with regards to that, with flooding or no flooding.
and no flooding. Now we got to harden the grid. And I keep saying this in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we provide for universal access to high-speed internet. Why is that important? I've learned that on a federal, state, and local level, communication about impending disaster goes out by social media. When I was a kid, there'd be this flashing thing where your TV station would go bulletin, 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 bulletin. No longer. It pops up on your phone. And during the storm, when electricity lines were down, fiber optic was still in there. So when I spoke to Chet Chasson
Right.
at the Port Fourchon EOC, they were communicating by fiber optics when everything else was down. So for further resiliency, we also need high-speed internet. By the way, that obviously helps at other times as well.
We're just so very glad that you're doing everything that you can to fight for Louisianians, to fight for what is right, and really pushing through some of these bills and holding off on some of these bills that we need to protect everybody from making sure that we can recover in a strong way. Can we talk a little bit about what y'all are trying to do with this delay in the flood insurance premium hikes?
Yeah, so FEMA, the administration, think President Biden's administration, made the decision to begin raising more rapidly the flood insurance premiums. Now, at first, you're going to see your premium up a little bit, but it won't seem that bad. But then it's going to begin shooting up a few years from now. And that's when people will begin to drop their insurance because they can no longer afford. Now, we could stop this, or President Biden could stop it. All he has to do is write a note to FEMA, don't implement. He so far has not done that. So we're pushing him to try and get him to do that. And at the same time, we're doing other things that would keep the program affordable so that homeowner who needs flood insurance, particularly perhaps after Hurricane Ida, will still be able to afford the flood insurance that she or he needs to live in their home.
Yeah, and so having flood insurance, I mean, in a place like where we are, you know, with 5 bayous that go through our parish down to the South Lafourche area, we absolutely need flood insurance. But if people can't afford it, then that's going to be one of the first things that they drop.
And when people begin to drop, it makes the whole program not work well. Insurance works when you have a lot of folks that you spread the risk over. This rate increase, which again, President Biden could stop just with the stroke of his pen, this rate increase is estimated to cause ultimately 20% of the people purchasing the insurance to drop their insurance. Now, when that happens, you go into something called an actuarial death spiral. More and more risk upon fewer and fewer people, driving rates higher and higher, again, making them drop their insurance. So we need to preserve the program. It needs to be affordable. It needs to be accountable to the taxpayer and sustainable for society. Part of this is to delay the rate increase. Part of it is reforms, and part of it is to lower the risk of flooding in the first place. And that's what I'm attempting to do.
And so, and a lot of this got kind of pushed through without going before a vote. It just kind of got pushed through as a recommendation. And again, the president can stop it with just a signature.
Just a signature. Congress never told the National Flood Insurance Program to do this. They just decided to do it. When I was in the House, we were able to, House of Representatives, 8 years ago, they tried to do it. And I got an amendment passed which stopped them. But now they're once more doing it. And we need Biden to say don't. But in the meantime, we need to do some of the other stuff. For example, in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, there's billions for coastal restoration, prioritizing states hit by natural disasters in the last 6 years. That's Louisiana. There's $3.5 billion for flood mitigation to help elevate homes or to buy out repetitively flooded properties prioritizing areas that have recently been flooded. That's us. So we can also lower premiums by decreasing the risk of homeowners of being flooded. I really like that. We can't rebuild our communities every generation. We've got to make a resilient community. And when we build that resiliency in, flood insurance premiums also go down.
So it's a really proactive way to really prevent the damage that we're seeing now that we could kind of prevent next time. And that's why it addresses the issue for those that have really been impacted over the last 6 years.
Absolutely. The fact that the Morganza to the Gulf has protected so many people from flooding is an example of what you think, what happens when you think ahead and are proactive. Now we need to do that as regards other. You and I were talking offline, and that picture behind you, there's a home that was built to code, probably after Hurricane Katrina, that looks pretty good if you like pink. There's another home that's probably older right next to it, totally destroyed. We need every home to look like that pink home.
Right.
Even when a storm comes, it's not flooded, it's still standing, may have lost a shingle or two, but the family can still live there. That's my goal.
And so it's really interesting you say that. I'm for two ways. Infrastructure is important to be able to be held, but it's also important for us to do what we can to maintain the structures so that people can live in their homes. And so in this last minute, kind of wrap us up, if you don't mind, about the importance of why we need to do this now.
Yeah, so we have to do it now so that people will be committed to returning to their community. The bipartisan infrastructure bill, for example, has $3.5 billion to help homeowners weatherize. One thing I'm working with the governor and with the federal officials, how can we get all this money going for housing to help pay for permanent housing that's built to hurricane code that is affordable for a working family? It's not easy to get this done, but we've got to start working on it so that our communities are resilient. And when the next storm happens, we can look at the ground, we can say the ground is dry, we can look up and say the lights are on, we can get on the internet and communicate. We need that kind of resiliency.
Yeah. Senator Cassidy, we can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing these ideas and what you're doing to fight for us in Louisiana. We thank you so much.
Thank you, Keith.
All right. And that'll do it for this edition of Bayou Time. Don't go anywhere. A whole lot more programming when we return.